Imagine it is 9 in the morning on just a random Tuesday.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. You are sitting in this well-lit conference room. Maybe you're sipping some lukewarm coffee, and you're just looking over a totally standard project update.
Just a normal, boring day at the office.
Exactly. And out of nowhere, a colleague from across the table leans back, gives this tight little smile, and says in front of like 12 other people, "I'm surprised you're struggling to grasp such a basic concept, but I can walk you through it again offline if you need the extra help."
Oh, man. The ambush.
The ambush. And in a fraction of a second, your heart rate just completely spikes.
Oh, yeah, your palms start to sweat.
Yes, your chest feels tight, and your mind just goes totally blank. I mean, you try to formulate a response, but all you manage is this awkward defensive mumble.
Right, like, no, I get it.
Exactly. And then the worst part is, 3 hours later, while you're standing in the shower or driving home, you suddenly think of the absolute perfect, devastating comeback.
But it's way too late.
It is entirely too late. The moment is gone, the damage to your reputation in that room is already done, and you are just left carrying this heavy, exhausting residue of feeling totally cornered.
And, society tells us that what just happened there was merely a conversation, like just a slightly unpleasant workplace interaction.
Right, just office politics.
But if we actually look at the physiological response you just described, the heart rate, the sweating, the blank mind, that is not the biology of a conversation.
Wait, really? What is it then?
That is the exact biology of someone who has just been attacked by a predator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your body doesn't actually know the difference between a physical threat in the jungle and a status threat in a conference room. To your nervous system, it's the exact same emergency.
That is terrifying, but it makes so much sense, which actually brings us perfectly to the mission of our deep dive today.
Let's get into it.
We are exploring a truly massive, comprehensive framework created by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat. It's titled Verbal Martial Arts, Social Concentric Circles, and Non-Reaction.
It's a brilliant piece of work.
It really is. And the goal today isn't just to give you, the listener, a few clever comebacks. Like, the ambition of this material is much deeper than that.
Yeah, it's a total teardown of how we handle conflict.
Exactly. We are unpacking an intensive masterclass designed to completely rewire how you process conflict, turning you into someone who is virtually unprovokable.
Which is practically a superpower these days.
Truly.
Yeah.
So we are going to look at the exact tactical moves to use when you are under fire, the architectural design of your relationships to keep the fire away from you in the first place, and then the ultimate psychological weapon, which is absolute non-reaction.
And the material introduces this profound paradigm shift right at the beginning. Because if we look at human history, for thousands of years, survival basically depended on winning physical wars.
Right. Swords and shields.
Exactly. If someone wanted to dominate you or take your resources, they had to physically cross into your territory. They had to risk getting hit back.
Which is a pretty big deterrent.
Huge deterrent. That physical risk acted as a natural brake on endless aggression. But in the modern civilized world, that geographical battlefield has essentially vanished for most of us.
We aren't fighting for physical survival every day.
Right. We no longer fight physical wars for survival. We fight verbal wars for status, for influence, and for emotional control.
And the weapons in this new war are entirely invisible. Like, words are the weapons. Silence is the strategy. Attention is the currency. And your emotional reaction, that is the surrender.
That's a great way to frame it.
We are living in a society that is just absolutely addicted to outrage, yet we send people out into this world completely unarmed.
It's so true.
I mean, we spend 2 decades teaching kids how to read, write, code, do calculus, but nobody ever sits us down and teaches us how to protect our own nervous system from someone who is subtly trying to dismantle our confidence.
We basically step onto the battlefield completely blind to the fact that it even is a battlefield.
Right. So before we can actually equip you with these verbal martial arts, we have to start by analyzing the terrain itself. Where is this combat actually happening?
And the source material maps out several distinct environments where this modern warfare is just unavoidable. And the most prominent one, the place where most adults spend the vast majority of their waking lives, is the workplace.
Yeah, the text calls the corporate environment the most polite battlefield on Earth.
Which is such a chillingly accurate description.
Yeah, it really is. It is warfare that is heavily disguised as professionalism. Because open, aggressive hostility, like screaming at someone, will just get you fired or sent to HR. So the combat mutates. It goes underground.
It becomes a shadow war. Think about it. A corporation is essentially a modern kingdom.
Okay, I like that analogy.
You have strict hierarchies, shifting power dynamics, and this incredibly intense competition for very limited resources. Promotions, budget, getting credit for a successful project, or even just getting the boss's favor.
Right. People still have that primal urge to dominate their rivals and secure their own status.
Exactly. But they have to do it using the approved corporate vocabulary.
This is where we see the weaponization of politeness. The text gives these infuriatingly familiar examples of phrases that look helpful on paper, but are actually psychological strikes.
Oh, I know exactly the ones you mean.
Like, just to clarify, or not sure if you were aware.
Or the undisputed king of passive aggression, with all due respect.
Oh, that one makes my blood boil.
Right. Let's break down the actual mechanics of with all due respect. When someone uses that phrase, they are doing two things simultaneously. First, they're establishing a rhetorical shield.
A shield? How so?
Because if you get upset, they can just say, hey, I said with all due respect, I was being polite.
Right, right. Plausible deniability.
Exactly. But the subtext, the actual payload of that sentence is almost always, I have zero respect for what you just said, and I am about to dismantle it while asserting my superiority.
They are trying to push you downward in the invisible social hierarchy of the room.
And they're doing it in a way that makes you look totally unhinged if you react emotionally.
Which is so manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And if the workplace is the polite battlefield, the second arena the material highlights is the exact opposite.
Politics in public spaces.
Yes, it's the chaotic battlefield. Politics used to be, a mechanism for governing, but now it acts as this massive training ground that conditions society to treat every conversation as tribal combat.
Nuance is basically dead in that arena.
Yeah.
The modern political discourse actively rewards outrage over everything else. It trains people to stop listening to individuals and instead just categorize them into broad, hostile labels.
Right. Like if you hold one specific view, you are immediately assigned this entire package of beliefs by your opponent.
Yep, you're the enemy, Al.
And this tribal hostility just leaks out into everyday public spaces. The coffee shop, the grocery store line, the highway.
The airport is a prime example of
The
that.
airport is the absolute worst.
The text describes public spaces as these arenas where strangers just project their accumulated life stress onto whoever happens to be standing nearby.
Like the gate agent.
Exactly. Someone isn't actually screaming at a gate agent because their flight is delayed by 20 minutes. They're screaming because they are drowning in debt, their marriage is failing, and this minor inconvenience is the permission structure their brain needs to finally unload all that trapped cortisol.
They are basically using the stranger as an emotional dumping ground.
Precisely. But as difficult as the workplace and public spaces can be, there is a third battlefield that the text identifies as far more treacherous.
Because the weapons used there are custom forged for you.
The family gathering.
The holiday dinner table. It's jarring, honestly, to think of family as a battlefield because our entire cultural narrative is that family is your safe harbor.
But the reality is that family members possess a level of emotional access that no coworker or stranger ever could. They have the blueprints to your psychological architecture because they help build it.
And because they have those blueprints, they know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. They know exactly where your armor is the weakest.
Yeah. The combat here is incredibly complex because it is almost always wrapped in the camouflage of love or concern.
Yes. Like when a parent or a sibling actively humiliates you in front of your partner, and when you object, they reframe it.
I'm just trying to keep you grounded. Or I'm the only one who cares enough to tell you the truth.
Or the ultimate trap weaponizing shared history. After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you speak to us.
It is profound emotional blackmail.
And the societal pressure to just absorb it is immense. We are constantly told you have to forgive them, their family, which basically translates to you must allow these specific people to repeatedly damage your nervous system without consequence.
Which is toxic. And then looming over all of these physical spaces is the fourth arena, social media.
A global battlefield with absolutely zero rules of engagement.
It is an environment built by some of the smartest engineers in the world to actively monetize human provocation.
It just strips away all the evolutionary safeguards we have for communication. Like, when we speak face-to-face, there are micro-expressions. We see the other person wince. We hear their voice crack. Empathy naturally kicks in to modulate our aggression.
But behind a screen, the humanity of the target is completely abstracted. You're literally just typing words at a glowing rectangle.
Right. And the underlying algorithms of these platforms are explicitly designed to promote anger. Anger is a high arousal emotion. It keeps users scrolling, typing, and engaging far longer than contentment does.
So the platform actively serves you content that will enrage you. Furthermore, the combat here is asymmetric and permanent.
Permanent is the key word there.
Yeah, if you lose your temper in a coffee shop, it evaporates into the air. If you lose your temper online, you are creating a permanent digital scar.
You are fighting in front of an audience of thousands of strangers who view your emotional distress purely as entertainment.
It's gladiator combat, but digital.
Laying out these 4 arenas really clarifies the scope of the problem. But before we get into how to fight back, there is a fundamental distinction the source makes that completely changed how I view human interaction.
The difference between conflict and combat.
Yes, we tend to use those words interchangeably, but they are entirely different species of interaction.
Understanding this difference is honestly the key to knowing which tools to use. Conflict is actually a very natural, healthy part of life.
Right, you can't avoid all conflict.
No, and you shouldn't. Conflict happens when two people have different perspectives, different needs, or different goals. But the underlying foundation of conflict is mutual respect. Both parties want a resolution.
Like you and your spouse disagreeing on how to budget for a vacation, that's a conflict. You can debate, you can compromise, and ultimately both sides can win.
Combat, however, is not about finding a resolution at all. Combat is exclusively about power.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
When someone initiates verbal combat with you, they do not care about your perspective. They are not trying to understand your side of the story. Their primary objective is for you to lose status, to feel diminished, and to submit to their dominance.
And this is where highly intelligent, logical people constantly fall into a trap, right?
All the time. When an intelligent person is attacked verbally, their instinct is to explain themselves. They think, if I can just lay out the facts clearly, if I can just explain my rationale, this person will understand and the aggression will stop.
But the author points out the fatal flaw in that strategy. Bringing logic and deep explanations to a combat situation is literally like bringing a beautifully drafted peace treaty to a knife fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other person is holding a knife. They don't want to read your document. They want to see you bleed.
That is such a visceral image.
When you try to explain yourself to someone who is actively trying to dominate you, your explanation actually registers to them as submission.
Because it tells them, I acknowledge that you are the authority here and I am desperately seeking your approval.
Which leads directly to why the most common piece of advice we give people, especially kids, is entirely flawed.
Just ignore the bully.
Right. We are always told, just ignore them and they'll go away. And while creating distance online is a valid strategy, ignoring repeated, in-person combat in a workplace or a family dynamic is disastrous.
Because ignoring it doesn't signal to the attacker that you are above the fray. It signals that their attack was successful and that you are too weak to defend your own boundaries.
Every time you swallow a snide comment from a coworker and just force a polite smile, you are normalizing the disrespect.
You are actively training them that violating your dignity carries a cost of 0. You just become the path of least resistance.
And bullies, whether they are on a playground or in a corporate boardroom, are essentially energy economists.
Wait, energy economists, explain that.
They are looking for the maximum dominance payout for the minimum effort. If attacking you is free, they will do it every day. You have to make the cost of attacking you prohibitively expensive.
Okay, so if trying to logically explain ourselves is a trap and silently ignoring it just invites more abuse, we have to look at what actually happens when we try to stand up for ourselves in the moment. Like, why is it so incredibly difficult? Why do our brains seem to betray us the second the aggression starts?
This requires us to look under the hood at the sheer biology and speed of Soken combat.
The biology is fascinating.
The primary difference between written combat and spoken combat is time. If someone sends you a highly aggressive, passive-aggressive email, you might feel a spike of anger, but you have the luxury of time.
Right, you don't have to reply instantly.
You can walk away from your desk, go get a coffee, take a breath, let your heart rate settle, and then sit down to meticulously craft a perfectly detached, professional response. You control the pace.
But spoken combat denies you that time. It happens at the speed of sound. And when those sound waves hit your eardrum carrying an aggressive tone or a targeted insult, the signal doesn't go to the logical part of your brain first.
And no, it takes an evolutionary shortcut straight to the amygdala.
The threat detector.
Right. The amygdala is basically your brain's ancient alarm system. It was designed millions of years ago to keep you alive in the wild. Its job is not to analyze nuance. Its job is to act instantly to save your life.
So when the amygdala perceives an attack, even a verbal one, it instantly hijacks your entire nervous system. It floods your bloodstream with adrenaline and cortisol.
It literally pulls blood away from your digestive tract and pushes it into your limbs so you can run or fight. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow to pull in more oxygen.
You are plunged into full fight or flight mode. And here is the critical mechanical detail from the text. This entire biological cascade happens milliseconds before the signal ever reaches your prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the modern, evolved part of your brain right behind your forehead. It's responsible for logic, vocabulary, wit, and emotional regulation.
Basically, the part of the brain you need to formulate a clever response.
Exactly. But emotion is biologically faster than reason. By the time your logical brain boots up to assess the situation, your body is already screaming that you are in mortal danger. This is why you mumble, stutter, or lash out irrationally.
The attacker is leveraging the speed. They throw a fast, casual insult to overwhelm your processing speed. They want you to stumble, because in a social setting, whoever stumbles looks incompetent, and whoever looks calm looks like the victor.
It is wild to think that a snarky comment about a spreadsheet triggers the exact same biological alarm system as a bear charging at you in the woods.
It really is. But this biological reality completely shatters a very popular modern narrative.
Yeah.
We live in an era that totally worships the concept of authenticity.
Oh, this part of the book is so countercultural.
Right. We are constantly bombarded with messaging that says we need to speak our truth, let our guards down, and show our raw emotions. If we are angry, we should express it, because bottling it up is unhealthy.
And the author attacks that premise head-on when it comes to conflict. In the context of verbal warfare, raw, unfiltered emotion is not some beautiful expression of your truth. It is a massive, gaping vulnerability. It is a liability.
Because the world does not actually reward raw authenticity. It rewards controlled authenticity.
Yes. If you let your hijacked amygdala speak for you, you are going to sound erratic, defensive, and deeply insecure. And unlike a written draft, a spoken mistake cannot be edited. Once the words leave your mouth, they are permanent architecture in the room.
If you lose your temper and scream at the passive-aggressive coworker, no one remembers the subtle provocation that started it. They only remember that you lost control.
You have literally handed the attacker the exact weapon they need to brand you as unstable. The goal isn't to suppress your emotions so deeply that you become numb. The goal is to create a gap between the stimulus and your response, so you can choose a tactical action rather than an emotional reaction.
Which brings us to the absolute core of the framework, the tactical playbook. If our biology is rigged to make us fail under pressure, we cannot rely on spontaneous inspiration. We need a rehearsed system to override the amygdala hijack.
We need moves.
We need moves, and the author provides a highly specific toolbox of 30 core moves for executing verbal martial arts.
But before any of these verbal tactics can work, there is an invisible, nonverbal foundation that must be established. You cannot execute a calm reframe if your body is vibrating with panic. True calmness in a conflict is not just an attitude, it is a physiological discipline.
The text highlights 3 invisible pillars of this foundation: breath, silence, and physical presence. When that sudden insult hits you, your automatic reflex is to gasp or hold your breath, which traps the tension in your chest and signals to your brain, yes, we are in danger.
So the very first move of any verbal martial art is taking one slow, deep, diaphragmatic breath.
Just a breath.
Just a breath. Because that deep breath physically stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs from your brain down through your abdomen. Stimulating the vagus nerve acts like a biological brake pedal. It forces your heart rate to slow down. It drops your blood pressure. It tells the amygdala, stand down. The threat is not lethal.
And as you take that breath, you are weaponizing the second pillar, silence. Most people view a pause in conversation as a void that they desperately need to fill.
Right. If someone insults them, they feel immense pressure to respond instantly to prove they aren't intimidated.
But rushing your response actually proves that you are intimidated by their pacing.
Silence is an active move. If someone drops a heavy, aggressive comment, and you simply look at them in total silence for 3 full seconds, the social pressure completely reverses.
The vacuum of silence demands to be filled.
Exactly. And because you are refusing to fill it, the attacker suddenly feels exposed. Their comment hangs in the air, echoing, and they start to look foolish. You are demonstrating timing mastery. You are dictating the rhythm of the engagement.
And then you add physical presence to that. not crossing your arms, not fidgeting, not breaking eye contact. You become a wall. You establish a mental stance where you cannot be easily pushed off balance.
Once that physiological foundation is set, then you can reach into the toolbox. And the analogy of a soundboard is perfect here.
Yes, the soundboard.
Yeah.
Because when you are under fire, you don't have the mental bandwidth to compose a symphony. You just need to calmly look at your mental soundboard, select the appropriate button, and press it.
It is execution, not improvisation.
Let's explore some of the most powerful buttons on that soundboard. The first pairing is incredibly effective for dealing with those casual hit-and-run insults. The text calls them the mirror technique and the repeat that trap.
The mirror technique relies on the fact that passive-aggressive people rely on ambiguity. They want their insult to be vague enough that if you get mad, they can say you misunderstood them.
Right, like I didn't mean it like that.
Mirroring strips away the ambiguity. It involves taking their core phrase and reflecting it right back at them in a flat, neutral tone.
So if a colleague says, well, I guess some of us just have lower standards for this project.
You don't defend your standards. You don't get angry. You just hold eye contact and say, lower standards.
Oh, that's brilliant. You are handing the grenade right back to them before it goes off. You force them to either explain their insult, which makes them look openly hostile, or retreat and backpedal.
And the repeat that trap works on the exact same psychological principle. A lot of workplace or family combat happens through fast, slightly whispered comments or muttered jokes. The attacker wants the friction to be low.
Like your uncle muttering something disrespectful about your career under his breath at dinner.
Exactly. Your instinct is to either ignore it or start yelling. Instead, you deploy the trap. You stop eating, look at him, and calmly, without any anger in your voice, say, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat what you just said for the rest of the table?
Wow. It places a massive cognitive load on the attacker.
You were pulling them out of the shadows and throwing a massive spotlight on them. It creates a brutal dilemma. If they repeat the insult loudly and clearly, they lose their plausible deniability. Everyone sees them as the aggressor, and they look like a jerk.
But if they mumble, never mind, it was nothing, they have publicly submitted, they have retreated.
You win either way, and you didn't have to raise your voice once.
We also need to look at tactics for when the stakes are higher, particularly for leaders trying to keep a team on track. This is where the calm reframe and the redirect to mission come into play. Combat often involves someone trying to force a negative narrative onto you.
The calm reframe is about refusing to accept their premise entirely. If someone attacks your character by saying you're being incredibly stubborn and difficult about this contract, the amateur move is to argue the premise.
I'm not being difficult, I'm just trying to...
The moment you say, I'm not, you are playing defense on their field. You have accepted their frame.
So instead, you redefine the frame entirely. You calmly reply, I am being precise because the financial stakes on this contract are too high for ambiguity.
Yes. You haven't apologized. You haven't gotten defensive. You have simply taken their negative label difficult and swapped it out for a positive, high-status label precise. You control the narrative.
And the redirect to mission takes this a step further. Often, an attacker will try to drag a professional disagreement into personal, ego-driven territory. They want to argue about who is right, who is smarter, or who dropped the ball.
The redirect simply grabs the steering wheel and yanks the conversation back to the objective. You act as the adult in the room. You say, we can debate the historical timeline of who made which mistake later, but right now the mission is getting the servers back online before noon. So what is our next immediate step?
You are completely starving their ego of the oxygen at once. You make their personal attack look petty and small while elevating yourself as the mission-focused leader.
But what happens when you are dealing with someone who isn't just throwing a casual insult? What about a genuine bully? Someone who wants to lock you in a room and browbeat you until you submit.
The text offers the one-line shutdown and the exit line for these exact scenarios. Bullies thrive on duration. The longer they can keep you engaged in the argument, the more powerful they feel.
They literally feed on your long, desperate explanations. The one-line shutdown removes their food source. It utilizes the power of ultimate brevity. When they demand a lengthy justification for a decision they don't like, you don't give them a paragraph, you give them a period.
This is the final decision, or that behavior is entirely unacceptable.
A long explanation is an invitation to negotiate. A short, flat sentence is a locked door.
And if they try to keep banging on that door, you use the exit line. You pull the emergency ripcord.
The exit line is about asserting absolute autonomy over your physical presence. You say, this conversation is no longer productive. We will resume this when emotions have settled. And then, and this is the critical part, you walk away.
You hang up the phone. You close the laptop. You deny their ego the closure of a final victory. You just remove the target from the battlefield.
This sounds incredibly empowering, but it also brings up a tactical problem that the author warns about extensively. It's the difference between stating a boundary and actually enforcing one.
Oh, this is so relevant today. We see this all over social media. People loudly proclaiming their boundaries, but the text argues that stating a boundary is utterly useless on its own.
A boundary statement is just a line drawn in the sand. It is information. You say, I am happy to review this report with you, but I will not engage if you continue to raise your voice. That is the statement. But the framework is ruthless about this reality. Boundaries are absolute fantasies without consequences.
If you tell someone not to raise their voice and they immediately raise their voice again and you just sit there and take it, you haven't established a boundary. You have just established a bluff. You have taught them that your rules are fake.
This is where the framework introduces the concept of the disrespect tax. The disrespect tax means that every violation of your boundary must carry an immediate, non-negotiable cost.
So if they raise their voice, you don't warn them again.
You execute the tax. You pack up your notebook, you stand up, and you leave the room. You say, I can see we aren't able to have a respectful dialogue right now. I'm heading back to my desk. The tax is the removal of your presence, your attention, and your compliance.
You are training them, much like you would train a dog, honestly. Action equals consequence. But enforcing that tax or striking back at an attacker requires immense precision. The author is very careful to distinguish between how amateurs fight back and how professionals fight back.
It's the difference between a tantrum and a strike.
Yeah.
This is perhaps one of the most vital distinctions in the entire playbook.
Explain the difference.
When people finally get pushed too far, they usually unleash a tantrum. A tantrum is an emotional detonation. It is loud, it is chaotic, and it aims for total scorched earth destruction. It is fueled purely by wounded ego.
If someone insults your work, a tantrum is screaming, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're a toxic person. Everyone in the office hates you. And you messed up the Johnson account last year.
It is wild, undisciplined swinging.
Yeah.
You are bringing up history. You are attacking their character. You are flailing. And while it might feel incredible for about 30 seconds because you are finally venting, it is strategically disastrous.
Because a tantrum exposes your deep insecurity. It shows the attacker that they successfully penetrated your armor. You look emotionally unstable, and you instantly lose any moral high ground or perceived authority.
A strike, by contrast, is surgical. It is controlled, cold aggression. It is brief. It is delivered with a calm voice. And crucially, it targets the specific behavior, not the core identity of the person.
Instead of screaming, you are a toxic monster, a clean strike is looking them dead in the eye and saying evenly, your tone is completely unprofessional. Do not speak to me like that again.
A strike doesn't seek to destroy them. It seeks to establish a hard perimeter. It signals absolute, chilling control. It terrifies a bully much more than yelling does, because a person who can remain calm while under attack is incredibly dangerous. They cannot be easily manipulated.
And this discipline leads us directly to the absolute golden rule of the tactical section. It is a rule created specifically for the era we live in. Never, ever give your enemy a screenshot-worthy moment.
The asymmetric nature of modern warfare means your attacker might provoke you in private. They might use a subtle tone or a series of tiny, hard-to-prove microaggressions to push you to the breaking point.
But the moment you snap and send that furious, profanity-laced email, or the moment you start yelling in the hallway, they win. Because your reaction is what gets recorded.
They will screenshot that email. They will clip that video, and they will distribute it permanently to HR, to your family, or to the internet. They can crop out their own provocation and present your reaction completely out of context to paint you as the unhinged villain.
If you maintain the discipline of the strike short, calm, values-based responses, you give them nothing to use. You cannot weaponize a screenshot of someone saying, let's keep this professional and focused on the data.
You starve them of the ammunition they're trying to trick you into manufacturing for them.
So we have this incredible tactical playbook to survive the ambush. But surviving an ambush is still exhausting. Having to constantly keep your guard up and parry attacks drains your energy, which transitions us beautifully into the next major paradigm of the material.
What if the highest form of victory isn't fighting perfectly? What if the true master is the one who designs a life where the fight simply cannot reach them in the first place?
This is the architectural phase of the framework. You cannot out-tactics a terrible environment. If you are surrounded by toxic, combative people 24 hours a day, eventually your armor will crack. The author argues that you must intentionally design the architecture of your relationships.
And the model provided here is brilliant in its simplicity. The social concentric circles.
I love this model so much. It asks you to visualize your life as a literal solar system. You are the sun at the absolute center. Every single other human being in your life, your spouse, your parents, your boss, your friends, strangers on the internet, is a planet orbiting around you.
And the specific orbit they occupy determines two things: their gravitational pull on your life and their emotional access to your nervous system.
The closer a planet is to the sun, the more its gravity distorts the sun's surface. In human terms, closeness is power. Most people live chaotic, dramatic lives because they allow this closeness to happen by default.
They assume that because someone shares their DNA, they automatically belong in the innermost orbit. Or because they sit next to someone at work every day, that person automatically gets emotional access.
The concentric circle model is about replacing that passive acceptance with aggressive, intentional curation. You must consciously assign people to orbits based on their behavior, not their title.
Let's start at the very center. Circle 1. This is you, the inner fortress. What fascinated me here is that the text doesn't rely on generic self-help advice. It doesn't talk about daily affirmations or journaling. It approaches Circle 1 as a biological defense system.
It argues that your literal physical health is your primary armor against verbal warfare.
It connects right back to the neuroscience we discussed earlier. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical, disciplined part of your brain that executes these tactics, is an absolute energy hog. It requires massive amounts of glucose and rest to function.
If you are chronically sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex is fundamentally weakened. It cannot keep the amygdala in check.
So when you are exhausted, a mildly annoying comment from a coworker isn't processed logically. Your depleted brain interprets it as a massive threat, and your filter collapses. You snap.
Exactly the same principle applies to nutrition and exercise. If your blood sugar is crashing, your mood stability vanishes. You become irritable and easily provoked.
Exercise isn't just about fitness. It is a critical physiological release valve for the stress hormones that build up during modern life. If you have high circulating levels of cortisol because you never physically burn it off, your baseline state is anxiety.
You are a powder keg waiting for a spark. Therefore, sleep, nutrition, and exercise are not self-care luxuries. They are tactical necessities. If Circle 1 is compromised, the sun goes dark, and no tactic will save you.
Once the sun is secure, we move outward to the inner orbits, Circles 2, 3, and 4. These are your closest family, your inner circle of friends, and your most trusted operators or colleagues.
The text refers to these orbits as your council and your shield wall. These are the people who have the deepest access to your vulnerabilities. And because of that access, the author insists on a deeply uncomfortable rule. Unconditional access is not love.
It is a profound boundary to set. Love can be unconditional, but access to your daily life, your energy, and your nervous system must be highly conditional. It must be continuously earned through mutual respect and emotional safety.
For your closest friends, your counsel, the author provides a really interesting litmus test. The ultimate test of a friend isn't whether they sit with you when you are suffering. It is whether they genuinely celebrate you when you are winning.
That is so true. Shared misery is easy, but when you start succeeding, when you get the promotion or achieve the goal, envy can turn old familiar friends incredibly toxic.
They start launching subtle, passive-aggressive strikes to pull you back down to their level so they don't feel inadequate.
And in the workplace, Circles 3 and 4 act as your shield wall. These are the trusted operators who watch your back in the corporate arena. They warn you about shifting political winds, they amplify your ideas in meetings so they aren't stolen, and they put in reality checks when you are losing perspective.
But you cannot populate these inner circles with just anyone. You must aggressively filter them. If someone gossips to you about everyone else, they will eventually gossip about you. They belong in an outer orbit.
This logic makes perfect sense for coworkers and casual friends. But applying it to family is where it gets incredibly painful. The text actively advises downgrading toxic family members to outer, more distant orbits.
How does someone actually do that? How do you enforce a disrespect tax on your own mother or a sibling without being crushed by the immense guilt that society heaps on you?
The author acknowledges that family boundaries are the ultimate boss fight of this entire framework. Family members are embedded with the deepest emotional hooks, and the primary weapon they use to bypass your boundaries is guilt, often disguised by the phrase, "but they mean well."
Society pushes this myth that if a family member's intention is good, you must absorb their toxic behavior.
But your nervous system doesn't care about their intention. If someone accidentally drops a brick on your foot because they meant well, your foot is still broken. If a parent constantly criticizes your parenting style or your career choices under the guise of wanting the best for you, the impact is still chronic stress and diminished confidence.
To manage this, the text advises shifting them to a further orbit. This doesn't necessarily mean a dramatic, tearful confrontation where you declare you are toxic, I am cutting you off. That is a tantrum. It means calmly enforcing distance.
You implement the disrespect tax systematically. If Sunday dinners always turn into an ambush, you stop going to Sunday dinners. You meet for coffee for exactly 45 minutes instead. You control the environment and the duration.
If they cross the line during coffee, you look at your watch, say, it was great seeing you, but I have to run, and you leave.
You systematically train them that if they want the privilege of your presence, they must abide by the rules of respect. It is difficult, but failing to do it means allowing them to slowly drain the energy you need for your own life.
So we have secured the inner circles. But we don't live in a vacuum. We have to interact with the wider world. This pushes us out into circles 5 through 7, the outer rings, the corporate arenas, public perception, and the vast, noisy expanse of the internet.
Out here, the attacks are rarely personal because these people barely know you. But the attacks are far more frequent, and the stakes for your public or professional reputation skyrocket.
Let's look closely at the corporate battlefield in these outer rings. The text makes a point of shattering a very comforting illusion, the illusion of the pure meritocracy.
We want to believe that if we just keep our heads down, do exceptional work, and hit our metrics, we will be rewarded and left alone. But in complex organizations, perception often overrules performance.
The workplace is an ongoing, silent battle for narrative control. If you do great work but allow a passive-aggressive rival to constantly undermine you in meetings, or let a manager quietly take credit for your late nights, your performance won't matter. Your narrative will be weak.
To survive in this orbit, the framework provides distinct survival mechanics. First is deflection without submission, which we covered with the tactical reframe. Second is credit defense.
You cannot assume management knows what you did.
Exactly. You must proactively summarize your contributions. At the end of a successful project, you send the wrap-up email detailing exactly how you solved the core problem, thanking others for their specific help. You cement the narrative before anyone else can claim it.
And the ultimate shield out here in the corporate orbit is documentation. I like to think of this as emotional bookkeeping. When you are dealing with a toxic boss or a manipulative colleague, their primary weapon is gaslighting.
They will verbally agree to something, and then 3 weeks later, when it fails, they will deny they ever said it and blame you.
Gaslighting relies on the frailty of human memory and the lack of physical evidence. Documentation destroys gaslighting.
After every contentious meeting, you follow up with a polite, sterile email. Per our conversation today, I will proceed with X based on your directive Y.
It seems bureaucratic, but it is actually narrative armor. It turns the shifting sands of corporate verbal warfare into hard, undeniable stone. When they try to rewrite history, you don't argue with them emotionally, you just forward the receipt.
Moving beyond general corporate combat, the text dedicates serious analysis to a highly charged, specific type of modern warfare found in the outer rings, ISM warfare, identity as a weapon.
And it's important to state clearly here, the author explicitly points out that these tactics apply regardless of your personal politics. This isn't about taking a political side, it's about the mechanics of an identity-based attack.
Right. The material is totally neutral on the politics itself. It just looks at how attackers weaponize things like sexism, racism, ageism, or classism to hijack the conversation and put you on the defensive.
From a purely tactical standpoint, identity-based attacks are incredibly dangerous because they are designed to bypass your intellect and strike directly at your core sense of self. They're designed to provoke maximum outrage, which immediately triggers the amygdala hijack we discussed earlier.
The author provides a highly mechanical 4-part template for surviving this specific type of ambush, focusing entirely on shifting the power dynamics rather than winning a political debate.
Let's walk through those 4 templates. The first approach is to neutralize.
Neutralizing is about deflecting the weapon without escalating the energy of the room. If a younger colleague dismisses your experience with a subtle, ageist comment like, "Well, maybe we need a more modern perspective on this," You don't get angry and defend your age.
You treat the comment with almost clinical detachment. You say, the data driving the strategy is current as of this morning. Let's focus on the metrics. You refuse to let their hook catch your emotion. You let it slide right past you.
The second template is expose. This is slightly more aggressive. It is about shining a bright, uncomfortable spotlight on the prejudice to shift the social cost entirely onto the attacker.
An identity attack usually relies on the assumption that you will be too embarrassed or polite to call it out. Exposing it turns that assumption upside down. If someone makes a sexist comment in a meeting, you stop the meeting.
You look at them calmly and name the behavior precisely. That sounded like you were dismissing my expertise purely based on my gender. Is that what you intended to convey to the room?
You are not yelling. You are simply holding up a mirror and forcing them to own their ugliness in front of an audience. The social pressure instantly crushes them.
The third is embarrass. This involves striking at the attacker's status, but doing so without ever resorting to a counter-prejudice. You have to maintain the absolute moral high ground.
For example, if someone mocks a coworker for having a heavy accent, or English not being their first language, a counterstrike using embarrass isn't about mocking their intelligence back. It is about calmly framing their worldview as deeply ignorant.
You might say, actually, operating fluently in multiple languages is universally considered a massive intellectual asset, not a deficiency. You elevate the victim and make the attacker look exceptionally small, provincial, and foolish, all while maintaining total professional composure.
And the final template is disengage, which is knowing when the battle itself is a trap.
There are times when an attacker is operating in absolute bad faith. They aren't throwing a casual insult. They're deeply committed to dragging you into the mud. They want the spectacle of a fight.
In those moments, disengage is the ultimate power move. You refuse the battlefield. You recognize that you have absolutely no obligation to justify your humanity or your worth to someone who is determined to misunderstand you. You cut off access, walk away, and preserve your energy for people who matter.
That concept of bad faith perfectly bridges us to the absolute outermost edge of the solar system. Circle 7, the asteroid belt. This is the domain of trolls, haters, and the vast army of anonymous online aggressors.
The source material draws a very stark line here. It insists that we must stop viewing trolls as opponents. They are not opponents. They are emotional scavengers.
Words matter. An opponent is someone who has a competing goal. An opponent wants to win a debate, or secure a resource, or prove a point. Trolls have no goal. They have no ideology. They are emotional scavengers who feed entirely on the chaos and pain of others.
Your emotional reaction is their only source of nourishment.
The author uses this incredibly vivid, visceral metaphor for engaging with this outer ring. Engaging with a troll is exactly like deciding to wrestle a pig in the mud.
You get absolutely filthy, you exhaust yourself.
And eventually you realize the pig is actually enjoying it. The pig lives in the mud. The mud is its home advantage. You are stepping into an environment where your logic and decency are completely useless.
Even if you construct the most brilliant, logically flawless, devastating counterargument and win the debate against the troll, you have still lost. Because you spent an hour of your finite life and a massive amount of your emotional energy wrestling in the mud with a scavenger who is just laughing at the screen.
This is why the material aggressively champions tools like blocking, muting, and deleting.
People often feel guilty about blocking someone. They think it means they lost, or that they are creating an echo chamber, or that they are running away from a fight.
But tactically, creating distance from a scavenger is not running away. It is high-level martial arts. A samurai doesn't draw his sword to fight a swarm of gnats. Blocking is simply closing the gate to your fortress.
You are actively starving the troll of the only thing they want, your attention. You are denying them access to your nervous system.
Which brings us to the final absolute summit of this entire framework. We have covered the tactical strikes. We have organized the concentric circles to filter out the noise. Now we reach the ultimate psychological weapon, non-reaction. The ability to sever the emotional cord entirely.
The author presents a sobering truth here. Human beings are addicted to reaction. Reacting feels incredibly good in the short term. When someone provokes you and you fire back with a clever insult, your brain gives you a massive hit of dopamine.
It spikes your adrenaline. It makes you feel sharp, powerful, and righteous. You feel like you are actively dispensing justice.
But it is a trap. The material argues that when you react emotionally, you are actually performing the ultimate act of surrender. You are literally taking the remote control to your own nervous system, handing it to a complete stranger and saying, here, you decide how my day is going to go. You decide if my heart races. You decide if I can sleep tonight.
It makes you entirely predictable. And to a manipulator, predictability is the ultimate weakness. If they know exactly which button to push to make you explode, they own you. They can steer you into any trap they want.
The text illustrates this dynamic brilliantly using the paparazzi model, drawing on a profound insight from the global actor Shah Rukh Khan. This was such a light bulb moment for me. Whether it is a literal paparazzo hiding in the bushes, an internet troll, or a toxic coworker trying to get a rise out of you in a meeting, they all operate on the exact same business model. Provoke for profit.
Their entire goal is to extract a reaction from you, because your explosive reaction is the actual product they want to sell, leverage, or consume.
The paparazzo yells an incredibly vile insult at the celebrity, hoping the celebrity snaps and throws a punch. Because a photo of a celebrity walking quietly to their car is worth nothing. A video of a celebrity screaming and throwing a punch is worth a fortune.
And the brutal, unfair truth of human psychology is that the public audience will entirely forget the initial provocation. They won't remember the subtle insult the coworker whispered. They won't remember the vile thing the troll typed. But they will permanently remember your unhinged, angry reaction.
You, the victim of the provocation, suddenly become the villain of the narrative because you are the one screaming on camera.
This is why total, absolute silence is the ultimate dominance. When you look at the provocateur and you simply do not react, when your face remains impassive, when you don't even break your stride, you shatter their business model.
You deny them the product they desperately need. You leave them standing there holding their insult, forced to sit alone with their own ugliness. It is the ultimate assertion of emotional sovereignty.
But achieving that level of Zen-like non-reaction is hard, especially as your responsibilities grow. Which is why the author introduces a critical mechanical solution in the final chapters: delegation. The understanding that truly powerful people do not fight every battle themselves. They outsource warfare.
We can look at the concept of the president. The President of the United States is arguably the most criticized, attacked, and targeted human being on the planet. Millions of insults are directed at them daily.
If the president spent their day personally reading every hostile comment and trying to craft clever comebacks on social media, they would literally never have a single moment to actually govern the country. The mission would collapse.
So they use a massive buffer system. They have the Secret Service to handle physical threats. They have a press secretary to handle the hostile media. They have a chief of staff to filter internal drama. They build an architecture of gatekeepers so that the noise never reaches the Oval Office.
Now, obviously, the average listener doesn't have a literal Secret Service or a press secretary. But the core principle of delegation scales perfectly to everyday life. If you are trying to build a career, run a business, or raise a healthy family, your attention is your most valuable asset. You must build your own personal buffer systems to protect it.
For a mid-level manager or small business owner, what does that personal Secret Service actually look like in practice?
It looks like systems and protocols. It means setting up aggressive email filters so that correspondence from chronically hostile clients automatically goes into a specific folder that you only check once a week, rather than buzzing your phone at 9 p.m. on a Friday.
It means empowering a trusted junior team member, your shield wall, to handle the initial rounds of conflict resolution on a project so you don't have to wade into the drama.
It means utilizing legal buffers, like a standard contract clause, so that if a dispute arises, you don't argue emotionally, you just point to the paper.
Even in a family setting, it's having a protocol with your spouse before a difficult family dinner. If Uncle John starts bringing up politics, you change the subject to the garden. If he pushes it, we execute the exit plan and leave.
You have a pre-agreed system, so you aren't fighting the battle alone in real time. It is all about slowing down the speed of the battlefield and ensuring that random, chaotic conflicts do not derail your core, overriding mission in life.
Because ultimately, your mission is the entire point. Which brings us to the philosophical conclusion of this entire massive framework, the archetype of the warrior who doesn't need to fight.
We started this deep dive learning how to fight. We learned the tactical strikes, the reframes, the 30 moves to survive the ambush in the conference room. We learned how to build walls and boundaries.
But the ultimate goal of verbal martial arts is not to spend the rest of your life walking into rooms and verbally dominating everyone you meet. The goal isn't to be in a constant state of perfect warfare.
The goal is absolute freedom. You master the tactics so that you are no longer afraid of the ambush. You build the concentric circles so that the toxicity cannot reach your inner orbit. You practice non-reaction so that no one can steal your emotional energy.
And when you do all of that, you realize you don't need to fight anymore. Your mission, your art, your career, your family, your joy becomes so loud and so important that the noise of the critics simply fades into the background. Your continued, unbothered progress is your ultimate counterattack.
It is a profound evolution. And the author leaves us with one final, incredibly resonant metaphor to anchor everything we have discussed today. Life, inevitably, is always going to have mosquitoes.
Petty people, jealous coworkers, angry strangers, passive-aggressive family members, they
Yep.
are the mosquitoes of the human experience.
And you face a choice. You can spend your entire finite life standing in the swamp, endlessly swatting at every single mosquito that buzzes near your ear. You might kill a few of them, you might win a few arguments, but you will spend your entire life exhausted, covered in bites, and consumed by the swamp.
Or you can choose a different path. You can step out of the swamp. You can build a house. You can install heavy doors. You can weave fine mesh screens.
You can construct an environment, a fortress, where the mosquitoes simply cannot reach you in the first place. You master your environment, and in doing so, you master your own mind. That is the true essence of verbal martial arts.
It is about reclaiming your energy and putting it toward what actually matters. It is a complete structural rebuild of how we interact with the world. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final provocative question to carry with you as you walk into your next meeting or open your phone or sit down at your next family dinner.
If your attention and your emotional energy truly are the highest, most valuable currencies in the modern world,
Who are you currently funding with your emotional reactions? Are you paying the trolls? Are you funding the toxic colleague? And just imagine what incredible, beautiful things could you build if you took all of that massive investment back and spent it entirely on yourself. Stay calm, build your screens, protect your fortress, and we will see you on the next deep dive.